Hello, students. This is a class for BA Part 2 English Literature students, and we will be doing Macbeth, the play by Shakespeare. And this lecture is in continuation with my earlier lecture, Macbeth 5. And we are continuing the introduction part. We are actually doing the summary of the play, and now we enter into Act 3 of scene third and fourth. We will be talking about the summary and critical analysis of scene third and fourth of Act 3. Okay, so in scene third, this is a brief scene in which the two murderers who are lying in an ambush for Banco and his son Fleance. They are joined by a third murderer with whom they were previously acquainted. They know each other. The third murderer tells the other two that he has been sent by Macbeth to assist them. As soon as Banco and Fleance arrive on the scene and they come down from their horses, the murderers attack them. Banco is killed on the spot, but Fleance manages to escape. Thus, only half of the task assigned to these murderers has been executed. This can be called a very effective scene on the stage during the performance of this play. Even in reading the play, this melodramatic scene has a sensational effect upon the minds of the audience. It is a very thrilling and tragic scene in which an innocent man, Banco, who is a friend to the hero, is killed, murdered, and in which Macbeth's tyrannical rule as the king is emphasized. The scene also shows the extra precaution that Macbeth has taken for the success of his conspiracy against Banco. He has sent a third murderer to join the two. Why? Simply to make sure that the other two do not deceive him, betray him, and they may not be afraid or run away. And moreover, he tries to provide the first two murderers with an additional helper, you can say. As we have observed before, Macbeth has become an accomplished conspirator. So, in this manner, the scene third comes to an end. We enter into scene fourth, and in scene fourth, we once again reach to the royal palace where the dinner is all set. Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, and the other noblemen start arriving for the great occasion. Macbeth begins to mingle with the guests in order to speak words of welcome. Suddenly, he sees one of the murderers at the door and he goes quickly to meet him. He is anxious to know whether the work is done or not. The murderer tells him that Banco has been killed, but Fleance, his son, has escaped. Fleance's escape comes as a great blow to Macbeth's plan because it was the prediction that Banquo's offspring, that is to say, his son, will become the next king, and thus he feels cabined, cribbed, and confined, bound in to saucy doubts and fears. I unquote the lines. However, something has been achieved by the murder by this murder of Banquo. Macbeth then sends them away and rejoins the guests. A very interesting incident occurs at this moment when Macbeth tries to occupy the seat meant for him where the king should sit. Banquo's ghost already occupies his seat. Mac- Macbeth is unnerved. Addressing to the ghost, he says, "Thou cannot say, I did it. Never shake thy glory, thy gory locks at me." The guests are surprised to see Macbeth addressing the empty chair because the ghost is not visible to other guests. Lady Macbeth at once understands the situation, that her husband is under a hallucination, and that his sense of guilt is at the root of this matter. She tries her utmost to awaken him to the reality and to enable him to get rid of his fear. She tells the guests that her husband has been overcome by a fit and that the fit will pass in a moment. Macbeth continues to talk to the ghost until the ghost disappears. And now, when the ghost has disappeared, Macbeth expresses his surprise that a dead man should have risen and should have come to confront him. Lady Macbeth again tries to explain so that the guests should not suspect the truth. Macbeth then apologizes to the guests, saying that he suffers from a certain infirmity which is well known to those who are very close to him. And in this manner, he tries to hide, he tries to cover the thing. Macbeth next calls for wine and says that he would drink to everybody's health and happiness. Just then, the ghost of Banquo appears to Macbeth once again, and Macbeth this time calls upon the ghost to quit and not to bother him. He throws a challenge at the ghost, asking it to come and fight with him in the shape of a man, or if he chooses to be a beast, but not in the present shape of ghost. The ghost disappears and Macbeth recovers his balance of mind. Macbeth asks if such things do really exist and feels sorry that his courage should have failed him on seeing this strange sight. When Ross, one of the noblemen, asks him what sight he is referring to, Lady Macbeth intervenes because she would not like her husband to be cross examined on this point, because she knows that if her husband will speak, he may blurt out that it was Banquo's ghost, and later on she knows that Banquo is dead, he is murdered. So she wants to hide this all. So she bids a hasty good night to all the guests and requests them to leave her husband alone. Now, when the guests have gone, Macbeth tells his wife that the ghost had probably come in order to take revenge. "Blood will have blood," says Macbeth. This is very famous line. No murder can ever remain a mystery. Stones have been known to move, trees have been known to speak in order to expose a murder. The appearance of the ghost has distressed Macbeth, but he recovers enough of his courage to talk about the next danger which he faces. He tells Lady Macbeth that Macduff seems to be hostile to him. Macduff is one more nobleman, and that he would like to do something to subdue that man. He says that he will go the very next day to the weird sisters, that is to say, the witches, three witches, in order to find out more about his future. He also says that soon his mind will become hardened to the murders because he cannot now retrace his steps. This is another very effective scene on the stage. The supernatural element is introduced in this scene, and this supernatural aspect provides an air of mystery, suspense, and horror to it. It is noteworthy that Banquo's ghost appears only to Macbeth and nobody else who is present in the dinner, is able to see, not even to Lady Macbeth. And we can say it is actually Macbeth's mm, sense of guilt which becomes an objective reality before him. The ghost is a personification of Macbeth's sense of guilt. Macbeth has not yet become a confirmed murderer because he is on the way to achieve that position. At present, his conscience is tormenting him for the murder of Banco because Banco has been his friend also. And that is why he sees the ghost just as he had previously seen a known existent dagger. खंजर एक वो उसको दिखता है किल करने से पहले डंकन को, वैसे ही दिस इज अनदर सीन मेड अप ऑफ हिज imagination. His seeing the ghost shows again his deep awareness of the crime that he has committed and also his excitable imagination. If we pay attention to the character of Lady Macbeth, she plays a role which is highly creditable to her. She takes charge of the situation as soon as she finds that her husband is succumbing to his fears and he has fallen into a hallucination. Hallucination means Brahm, Maya, Mayajal. So she speaks encouraging words to him so that he can restore himself, and she also at the same time explains to the guests that her husband is uh, a victim of fits periodically. Indeed, but for Lady Macbeth's presence of mind and her quality of leadership, Macbeth would have completely betrayed him. Without her, Macbeth would have been, you can say, revealed. His identity as a murderer would have been revealed in this scene. Even as it is, the guests must have left with a strong suspicion as to Macbeth's credentials. Uh, Still, we can say that Lady Macbeth has saved the situation for Macbeth in this particular scene. And now we enter into scene 5. And let us do it in my next lecture. Just uh, try to understand the scene 3rd and 4th today. We will do the rest of the story of Act 3 in my next lecture. Thank you very much.